Good evening and welcome to the July 12th, 2021 Board of Education meeting for the Cedar Rapids Community School District. The meeting is now called to order. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that the agenda of Monday, July 12th, 2021 Board of Education meeting be approved as set forth, and that each item is considered ready for discussion and/or action.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is a roll call vote.
Director Merschbach. Director Garlock.
Aye.
Director Newman. Aye. Director Riesinger.
Aye.
Director Borcherding. Aye. Director Talinsky.
Aye.
President Humbles.
Aye. Next, we'll turn to Superintendent Bush for her report.
Thank you very much, President Humbles. Good evening, Board of Directors, and good evening, guests. Thank you for being here this evening. So it is July, which is kind of Happy New Year for a school year, but we are in the midst of summer, and so we have lots of things going on in the summer and continue to celebrate student learning, even though it's July. We have some national recipients. I've mentioned History Day a couple of board meetings ago, but now we have some national award-winning recipients. One from Franklin Middle School. On the left side of the screen there, that is Annabelle from Franklin Middle School, who received a national award for her entry of the Miss America pageant protest of 1968, the key to women's equality. You can see Anna's presentation on the Franklin website and on our district website, or if you're a member of Facebook, follow us on Facebook, you can see her presentation. And then on the right is Caitlin Anderson and her presentation about Hello Girls operated switchboards for military communication. We talked about Caitlin's presentation earlier today, but congratulations to these young women who were part of a national recognition for National History Day. And so thanks also to all of our educators and our parents who had to support this in a virtual format this year as we shifted lots of things, but the continued learning in the summer is exciting. In addition to that, this is Discovery Camp, a picture from Roosevelt, supporting lots of STEAM activities and other activities. It's all about discovery of learning, and so we appreciate the support that the district provides for that ongoing learning of Discovery Camp at Roosevelt. Just so you know, the middle school program at Franklin Middle School, we also have the program of Scholars Camp at Roosevelt as well. Those two summer learning opportunities have continued this week as well, or it just started last week at Franklin. It's been going on at Roosevelt, but we have over 500 middle school kids involved in summer learning, 900 elementary age children involved in our Kids on Course University program, and over 600 high school kids enrolled in credit receiving courses this summer. A lot of our community partners, some are in our room right now, providing ongoing education and supports for kids. So an estimate for Cedar Rapids is well over 2,500 Cedar Rapids Community School District kids involved in district-related community partnership programs or the programs that we're providing this summer, and we look forward to growing that even more next year. You can see on this screen our facility master plan work continues. If you haven't been over to West Willow, you can see the official complete demolition of Coolidge, and the brand new building, West Willow, is much more visible to the eye. They're from the north side of the building. But the Maple Grove construction, the structures are finally rising over there. So it's exciting to see the construction of that building. So impressed with the commitment to the timeline, and everyone has worked super hard. So even through the rain, I see John Galbraith in the room. It doesn't stop the work. He will still go. So thanks for all those efforts there. And again, a shout out to our Buildings and Grounds team who've just done incredible efforts all year. Registration season has started. That's true. July 1st, Happy New Year to the 21-22 school year, but that means registration. We've added walk-in service on walk-in Wednesdays right here at the ELSC. We have services including translation services for our families. We welcome just dropping in between 10 and 2 if we're a convenient location. We also welcome families to go to their own school locations to get registered registered. We can also register online. That verification is really important so we can anticipate enrollment and be staffed appropriately for that enrollment. But we are at a record number of verifications of registrations for July. So thank you to our families for doing that early and getting your kids registered for the fall. So, this has been an ongoing conversation. Super proud of our transportation department, but we are asking for help from our community. This continues to be a personnel need for our district, and we need drivers. And we know that last year provided some challenges. Obviously, not all students came in person, but we anticipate in-person numbers at this point in time. We'll be back to those normal routes, and we need drivers. And so we're offering sign-on bonuses. We have great retirement plans, and we just, if folks have an interest, we also provide the training to become a driver. So we welcome you to our district. If you have an interest, on our website, or contact us, and we'll get you hooked up with our transportation department. This is a really great opportunity for community members. The America Relief Act, also known as the ESSER funds that have been allocated by the federal government to all districts, requires not just our district to make a plan, but that we get community feedback on the needs to recover learning lost over the past 18 months. So we have 2 community input sessions on July 27th. One is virtual at 11 o'clock to 12:30. We've had some staff input sessions as well, and that evening we will offer one in person. We will record the virtual session, and we do have an electronic form for folks to provide feedback. So if you're not able to attend one of those sessions, we will push that out to all of our subscribers of our e-newsletter and on our website so that folks can provide input even if they can't attend one of these sessions. After we gather all the input on how we are recovering learning from present for the next 3 years, we have a plan that we have to submit to the Department of Education by August 23rd, and have been really, really encouraged and inspired by the ideas coming from our staff and our community members. So not just traditional ways of recovering learning, but innovative ways in which we're recovering learning. So excited for that opportunity for our district. Just as a note, Cedar Rapids Community School District under the ESSER 3, also known as the America Relief Act dollars, received about $32.4 million. That is a huge opportunity for us to support our kids in the best ways possible. So that's all I have for you tonight, board members, and open to any questions you might have, but lots to celebrate. And again, we only get better with feedback, so invite that community input on the ESSER dollars as well.
And thank you so much for your update, and also Annabelle and Caitlin for receiving that national recognition. So that shows you that Cedar Rapids Schools, we do some pretty amazing things with our children and with our staff. And also the update with Discovery, Kids on Course, to see that our children are involved, and that is a real plus for us. And so we'll continue to do, all of you, to do the great work that we do. Now, I'd like to ask the board, are there any board reports?
President Humbles, I have a board report. At our last board meeting, I had reported that Iowa Association of School Boards had convened meetings between our federal delegates and Iowa Association School Board directors. Ashley Hinson's office had not been able to attend. They had a conflict on the day of. I sent an email kind of outlining what we were wanting to talk about to Ashley Hinson's office, and they rescheduled a meeting. So we were able to meet. As a happy follow-up, her office reached out and asked for numbers about how many of our districts have a SPED deficit, what those SPED deficits are, and how many, this is in her district, so in Congressional District 1, and how many SPED students are in Congressional District 1, which I think I took it as a positive indication that she is considering supporting funding the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act at the full 40%, which was promised at implementation of the bill.
Thank you. Any other board reports? Next, we'll move on to communications, delegations, and petitions. Board Secretary Day, do we have any speakers registered to address the board this evening?
Yes, President Humbles and board members, we do have members that are registered for tonight.
Before we hear those who have requested to address the board, I'd like to remind you to please state your name and address for record when called. You will be given 5 minutes for your remarks. Board Secretary Day will serve as your timer and inform you when your time is up. Additionally, in order to abide by the open meeting laws, I'd like to remind our speakers that there will be no dialogue between the board members and the public during this time except to clarify the nature of questions or comments from the individual speaking. Laurel, will you call our first speaker?
Our first speaker this evening is Jennifer Miller, and Jennifer is here to speak with you about para importance and wages. Jennifer, if you would please make your way to the podium.
Jennifer Miller, 632 Lime Rock Drive Northwest, and I'm a special education teacher with the district. It wasn't until later in my teaching career that I felt a calling to teach students with autism. My original degree is in teaching middle and high school English, so for 2 years while I took classes for my special education endorsements, I worked as a para in the Harding Autism Program. Para educators are the absolute backbone of special education. They work directly with students all day, every day. They greet students at the bus and help them transition from place to place throughout the day. They support, encourage, challenge, teach, and more. They keep students safe who often leave the area where they're supposed to be and who sometimes climb things or engage in other unsafe behaviors. They learn a variety of communication, behavior, and education strategies and are expected to use these techniques throughout the day. They often assist with eating and help students in the bathroom. They help students participate in instruction, facilitate the extra practice students need, and often assist with data collection. Many are certified in nonviolent crisis intervention and are expected to use these techniques to prevent, and then if needed, safely manage challenging and sometimes aggressive behaviors. They help facilitate interactions with gen ed students. They follow individual education plans, IEPs, and behavior intervention plans, BIPs. They are busy all day. Paras are not an extra body that is nice to have. They are essential. I would be happy to share my classroom schedule with you if you're interested, and my door is always open for a visit if you would like to see paras in action. In a typical autism classroom, there are 4 to 6 students. Each student either has his or her own para or shares a para with other students. Students with extensive health and safety needs qualify for individual assistance based on a rigorous qualification system. A classroom para assists multiple students with shared support and does as much as he or she can for the classroom in general. The support each student receives, shared or individual, is written in his or her IEP. An IEP is a legal document that outlines a student's education plan and the services and accommodations that that student is legally entitled to. It is not safe, legal, or in the best interest of a student's education to be without the support that they require. In order for students with autism to be safe and receive the quality education they are entitled to, classrooms must be properly staffed. Keep in mind that even a properly staffed classroom is short-staffed at least 2 hours out of every 7-hour day because of lunches, staff lunches, and breaks. That's 1/3 of every day. And if paras are absent, there are usually no subs. I have taught in the elementary autism program for 4.5 years. At the beginning of last school year, we had 13 students and should have had 8 paras, but we only had 4 and 1 was on medical leave. While the 4 open positions were posted throughout the school year, we were only able to find and hire 1 person, and that person was only available last year. The district typically has 30 open para positions at all times. This means that more than 30 students are not receiving the support they are entitled to, and many teachers are having to operate with short-staffed classrooms. Right now, there are 57 para positions posted. 45 of those positions are for special education. 29 positions are student-specific, which means these students require a para for health and safety reasons, and they are legally entitled to that support. The other 16 positions are for program paras who assist students with shared support, and these students are also legally entitled to that assistance. If you look at the postings for paras, you will see that many positions require 2 years of post-secondary education or para certification or a qualifying score on the WorkKeys assessment. There are up to 13 duties or expectations. The starting pay for these positions is $12.20 an hour. These positions are not full-time or year-round, so this decreases the number of people who will apply. For comparison, cashiers at Walmart are paid $11 to $17 an hour. Food and grocery workers there are paid $11 to $22, and online order filling and stocking workers are paid $13 to $21. At McDonald's, crew workers are paid $11 an hour and cashiers $13. Many paras work a 7-hour day, so a person working a full-time job at a business for just 11 hours a day will make $13 more a week than a 7-hour-a-day para. I talked to a friend of mine the other day whose 2 teenagers have summer jobs in town. One teen works at a convenience store for $15.60 an hour, and the other teen works at a warehouse for $17.60. All the jobs I have mentioned are important, but they are working with merchandise and food. We are entrusting parents with young human beings who have significant disabilities. So in summary, with the experience of a para and a teacher of students with autism, I can say that the correct number of quality paras is one of the most critical elements of an autism classroom. We want paras to work with nonverbal students who often engage in unsafe and sometimes aggressive behaviors, and we want them to keep those students safe and assist in providing them with a quality education. Yet they could go to Walmart, McDonald's, a convenience store, or a warehouse and get a full-time job with few requirements or expectations and
Excuse me, Ms.
probably more
Miller, your
pay.
time is up. Thank you so much.
Franklin Middle School debate experience.
Our next speaker is Kim Baldwin, and Kim is here to talk with us about para wages. Kim?
Good evening. My name is Kim Baldwin. I live at 2246 Brooklyn Drive Northeast in Cedar Rapids. I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak to you again tonight regarding the wages of paraprofessionals. I, along with other paras, spoke to you in May. Since that time, I chose to be a part of the article that Grace King wrote for the Gazette regarding the pay increase paras will be getting in the coming school year. Since that article ran, I have had many friends, neighbors, and even a Cedar Rapids Foundation board member reach out to me. Everyone has expressed that they did not realize the very important role and duties that paras hold in our schools. They were also very surprised to learn how poorly we are paid in this position, working with the children that need the most support in our schools. Over and over again, I've been asked why I continue to work for the district when I could work at Quick Star, Target, or other places making more an hour and with less responsibilities. Again, my response has been the same as always. I love what I do working with the kids. And due to my daughter's own disabilities, I have to be able to be on her schedule so I can be home with her during the summer. This works for our family. Having paras leave the district last year during a special ed hiring freeze caused classrooms to be understaffed, which led to increased behaviors, injuries to staff and students, and then we're told we're getting 17 cents an hour pay increase for the coming school year. It's very hard to justify staying in the district knowing this. As I said, I've made some tough decisions in the past month, including making the difficult call to Nixon principal Jenny Gable to tell her that I have resigned my position with the Cedar Rapids School District. I love my students at Nixon and the staff. However, I have to do what's best for my family. I have accepted a position as a para with another school district in the Cedar Rapids Marion area, with a starting wage of $1 an hour more than what I was making at Cedar Rapids. I've also been guaranteed by their HR and their union that the second year I will receive a 50-cent pay increase. The third year I will get an additional pay increase per their contract. In the 3 years I have been at Cedar Rapids Community School District, I've not received anywhere near 50 cents in raise. I believe it's been 32 cents over 3 years. The cost of gas, groceries, utilities have all gone up more than 17 cents in the last 6 months. I can't continue to provide for my family at this rate. I know the district has many para openings, and I do not know how these positions will be filled at this pay rate. I'm concerned for the students and the staff will not have the support of paras in their classrooms. I'm afraid that something will happen to someone, and someone will get seriously hurt or injured due to the lack of support some of the kids need in these classrooms. I would like to again thank you for your time. I've enjoyed my past 3 years of the Cedar Rapids School District. It has truly been a difficult decision to leave behind the amazing students and faculty at Nixon. I would like to take the time to thank Grace King for telling our story and for the board for everything you do for our students.
Thank you, Ms. Baldwin. Our next speaker is Paige Barber. Paige just wanted to speak with us tonight about para wages.
Hello, my name is Paige Barber. I live at 652 Affirm Lane in Fairfax, Iowa, and I'm speaking as an individual with you guys tonight. I would like to start out by also just, my pronouns are she, her, hers. I know I look kind of confusing. But, sorry, I make jokes when it's fine. So I just want to preface this with, I am the Educational Support Professional of the Year for Iowa State this year. No claps necessary. I just wanted that to be necessary. I'm going on my 4th year with the district. Before that, I worked with individuals with disabilities who were adults getting them jobs. And before that, for 2 years, I worked for a private school for kids with autism. And so I have a little bit of experience working with populations that have difficulties maintaining social norms. I could stand up here and tell you all the things that paras do. But I also know that without you coming in and looking at it directly, you will never understand. And so I'm not going to repeat things that have already been said because I think that you've heard things and I don't know how to make you understand that anymore. Instead of that, I'm going to take you on a little journey of the life of living as a paraprofessional. I have my bachelor degree, so I have student loans. They are a lot. They are $850 a month, and that is on the repayment plan based off of what I earn. I have to pay $850 a month in student loans. With this para wage, sometimes I have to decide, do I get to go to the doctor or do I get to eat this week? Because I don't have the finances to get there. Sometimes I have to decide, okay, I have ongoing medical conditions. I will keep those private, but I have to be seeing a doctor. And so sometimes I have to decide, I have an abscess on my tooth. Do I go to the doctor appointments I have, or do I go to the dentist? I have credit card bills because I'm just trying to figure out a way to survive. And like other paras have said, I am looking into other jobs in other districts that pay more because frankly, I cannot keep doing the things that I'm doing here in this district for you guys and for our students, which is really hard to say because I love my students. Every time I've been bit, every time I've been stabbed, because yes, that happens. Every time I've had to go to the hospital, thank God for workman's comps because I couldn't afford it myself. As angry as I am when I'm there, you can't blame the kids. You can't. You know, that's why I'm there, because I am there to be their advocate. I am there to show them that somebody is there who's going to be consistent. So the idea of leaving the kids that I've built these relationships for simply because I'm hungry and I want food is really hard. Okay, I'm a young person and I'm not even the youngest in our district. And I know people who have these same issues. I work multiple jobs. This isn't my only job. And on top of the multiple jobs that I work, I also build computers for people on the side for money, and I dog sit for multiple people on the side, just trying to figure out how I'm going to make it to the next month. Because honestly, sometimes I don't even know. My parents are lovely, and I'm in a great position. They help me out when I need it. But I'm one of the lucky ones. You guys aren't in the school every day hearing these paras talking about the difficulties that they have. So the fact that we, during a pandemic even, kept these jobs because we care about our students so much, and then the district comes out with a 17-cent raise. I didn't eat that week, and I got a 17-cent raise. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution to my financial situation. How would you feel if at your job, and I know this is rhetorical because we can't address each other with questions, but rhetorically think to yourself, if you got stabbed at your job, if you got bit at your job, if you got spit on, if you have a kid who is on a plan because he sexually harasses women and he touched you, and you had to deal with that, and then you decided, you know what, I'm gonna skip a couple meals this week because I have a doctor's appointment, and then you got a 17-cent raise. All of that amidst a pandemic. It's a little hard to fathom. So Like you've heard before, I am looking for other jobs. I have interviews with other districts, and if I get offered those, I will be leaving the district because I can't keep doing this, and I'm not the only one. A couple of us had come to speak to you tonight, but you better believe that there are way more of us out there, and at the end of the day, the ones who suffer the most are our kids because they lose the only ones who are there consistently for them. So think about that as you guys decide how wages are going to go out. I know that there are many people out there with different associations who are ready to help you find the budget because I get you can't make money appear out of thin air. So let's work together so that maybe, I can go to my doctor appointments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barber. Our next speaker is Rita Mccord. Rita is here tonight to speak about parapay SROs and questions.
Hi, I'm Rita Mccord, and my address is 5040 Willow Bend Road, Northeast Cedar Rapids, Iowa, 52411. Paraprofessionals are an integral part of self-regulation in the Cedar Rapids School District. I've taught a total of over a decade in kindergarten, and in our district, kindergarten teachers have the wonderful gift of working with a classroom para. The paraprofessionals that kindergarten teachers work with are lifesavers for our kids. When kids are in need of a walk or change of scenery, our paras can take them on extra needed breaks, provide extra help and attention to kids on a consistent basis, and troubleshoot on too many issues to name. Since kids come to kindergarten with a variety of experiences and preschool is not a universally required funded thing, these kids often don't know what this world of school is. So someone just quietly taking them by the hand while the teacher can conduct the business of the classroom is a very, very important self-regulation skill for the kids and for the grown-ups. Probably by now you can see this is heading for requesting a $15 wage for our paraprofessionals, and you might want to say there are fiscal obstacles. And to those obstacles, I ask you, are we able to apply some flexible thinking? My mom liked to preach, and she'd say, where there's a will, there's a way, and when God closes a door, somewhere he opens a window. And I've come here this evening asking for this same flexible thinking, asking you to open some windows. First, can we open the window of $15 an hour for our paraprofessionals? Paraprofessionals are the unsung heroes and unseen angels of our schools. They are founts of compassion and extra trusted relationships to our most vulnerable kids, as Paige so eloquently outlined. $15 an hour isn't nearly enough, but it helps support those who support our kids and is an investment worthy of asking us to find that window to open in our budget when it looks like the door is closed. If our gratitude towards our paras is our will, if retaining the passion and talent of our paras is our will, if contributing to our community as a hope spot is our will, surely we can find a way to pay paraprofessionals a better wage. Secondly, I have some questions. The Black Student Union members who presented to the board in June provided national and local data regarding SROs. And in hopes that the conversation and data are still being analyzed, and it seems to be the case, here are a couple of questions for consideration. One is, what % of the total possible respondents responded? We were told, I think, that there were over 500 students who did respond, but what % of the total possible students is that number? Secondly, out of the 72% of students who stated they felt that an SRO was necessary, was that data disaggregated for demographics? Because if we're just looking at it surface-like and saying, well, the majority says and majority rules, and that's kind of, if it's a majority rules decision to be made, it would be reassuring to hear that that majority is representative of the entire sample or mirroring the demographics of the entire sample at large. And those are my questions. And that's it, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is Ruth White. Ruth is here to speak about the SROs and the Black community.
Good evening. My name is Ruth White. I live at 319 Eastland Drive, Southeast Cedar Rapids, Iowa, 52403. And I'm here actually because we have students here from the academy. Last week, we had Jenny Schultz come and talk about SROs. And this past week, we had Tamara Marcus come and talk about her job. And both of those speakers indicated that there is impact made simply by showing up. So we have a couple of Academy students who have shown up, and I'd like for you to acknowledge them. Stand up, people. And a couple of parents as well. So, the one thing I want to say about SROs is that for me, as an individual, the jury is still out. I have met a couple of SROs. And I don't, as an adult, in visiting a high school, see what young people see when they encounter an SRO in the high school, whether it be for good or ill. But the one thing that Jenny Schultz said in her presentation to our students has to do with the difference between encouraging a student to be the friend or have a friendly relationship with a person who can end up arresting them. Seems like kind of counterproductive. And while I'm not suggesting that either of those is a wrong tack, I am suggesting that both should be examined very, very thoroughly, because of course the students are the ones who suffer if they encounter someone who is not well trained, not thoroughly trained, doesn't have the exposure to our students. And when I say our students, I mean Black, brown, and biracial students. So when we say SROs, I think most of us are reading encounters with Black, brown, and biracial students. So that's what I have to say about SROs. About our Black community, you may or may not know that I am a founder and executive director of the Academy for Scholastic and Personal Success. We deal with Black, brown, and biracial young people, giving them rigorous academic exposure from an Afrocentric or cultural perspective. And we see the need for staff and exposure to faculty who look like their students. One of the things that keeps the Academy afloat is the fact that our students are surrounded by staff who look like them. That does not happen in Cedar Rapids. I will say, Laura doesn't know I'm going to say this, but I taught Laura when she was Laura Parks. And I'm going to say to you that the fact that she had me as a teacher was unusual. More unusual was the fact that Black students had me as a teacher. And I don't know that that has happened to the degree to which it did when I was teaching at Washington High School since. I think it's incumbent upon the district to continue a vigorous search for qualified Black, brown, and biracial staff, and to hold on to the paras and other faces of color that currently are employed by the district. We don't have many teachers. We do have more paraprofessionals. So those paras are a touchstone for some of our students. So they're not in class with a Black teacher, but they have this Black person, whether it be a cafeteria worker or I don't know, a nurse, somebody that they can identify with. Our district seems to have been moving backwards in that regard. I'm just here to say we need to be moving forward because the numbers of students of color that we have is increasing, and we need to pay close attention to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. White. President Humbles and board members, that concludes our speakers for this evening.
Thank you all. We will now move on to our consent agenda. Are there any items that a board member would like to pull for a comment, question, or a separate vote?
President Humbles, I need to request to pull item BA-22-014 for a separate vote.
What was that, BA 22?
22014.
That's the agreement with the Metro Economic Alliance, Nancy.
I'm sorry, what?
That's the agreement with the Metro Economic Alliance.
Oh, okay, for a separate vote? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And President Humbles, I want to pull BA 22034, the meal price increase, for a brief comment.
I'm sorry, you can go ahead, Director Merschbach, Rock, if you'd like to make a comment.
I just wanted to, and this is mostly for my fellow board members, say that we should consider a resolution as a board at a future meeting advocating for, because in this next school year, the federal government has extended free lunch for all students across the country. And I think we should consider a resolution advocating for that to be made permanent to address our federal delegation. One, because it's the right thing to do. Every kid needs nutritious meals, in order to learn and to get through their day. But also, it would be the type of stability in that program that would allow us as a district and allow our schools to make more investments around that type of program that would help the community and help us address social needs better. And so I just think that's something we should consider at a future meeting.
Thank you, Director Merschbach. Any other board members would like anything pulled or a separate comment? If not, we will pull the BA 22014. Is that correct, Director Newman? And we will pull that for a separate vote. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Is there any further discussion? This is a roll call vote. I turn it over to you. I'm sorry, Laurel.
Director Garlock,
Aye.
Director Newman,
Aye.
Director Singer,
Aye.
Director Borcherding,
Aye.
Director Tominski,
Aye.
Director Marshbrock,
Aye.
President Humbles.
Aye. Next, we will vote on BA 22014, approval of Cedar Rapids Metro Alliance membership. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Abstain.
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we move on to board governance, and we have Director Borcherding that each year we submit 4 items, 4 of our priorities for the IASB legislative platform. And I'd like to thank Director Borcherding for compiling that information. Were we able to identify 4 of them, Director Borcherding? Would you like to report out on that?
Sure. So as President Humble said, every year the Iowa Association of School Board reaches out to 357 school districts that are present in the state of Iowa, requesting for their boards to submit their top 4 priorities that will then turn into legislative priorities pursued by our lobbyists. And then that goes back up to Iowa State, and then they narrow it down based on majority. So our board's 4 most wanted items for pursuit are preschool, mental health, supplemental state aid, and local accountability and decision-making.
Jennifer, can you tell me what numbers those would be? Oh, that's all right, never mind. I can look it up.
I can tell you what section they're under.
That's all right, I can find it, thank you.
And of note, we were unanimous on mental health.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. All those in favor of the top 4 as identified, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And I want to thank Director Borcherding for contacting us and getting our priorities in order, and also Secretary Day for completing the IASB survey on the board's behalf. Thank you so much. Next on the agenda are the appointment and oath office of our board secretary and board treasurer. Do we have a motion for the appointment of our board secretary?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is a roll call vote.
Director Newman. Director Riesinger.
Aye.
Director Borcherding. Director Tominski.
Aye.
Director Marshbrock.
Aye.
Director Garlock.
Aye.
President Humbles.
Aye. So Laura, do I need you to? And let us know if you, I gotta take off my glasses. If you can hear us, because we're using the mic up front. Do we need to? Okay. Do you, Laurel Day, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the Office of Secretary of the Cedar Rapids Community School District in the County of Lynn, State of Iowa, as now or hereafter required by law? If so, please respond by saying, "I do."
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, do we have a motion for the appointment of our board treasurer?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is a roll call vote.
Director Borcherding. Aye. Director Timinski.
Aye.
Director Merschbrock.
Aye.
Director Garlock.
Aye.
Director Newman.
Aye.
Director Riesinger. President Humbles.
Aye. Hey, do you, Dave Nicholson, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the Office of Secretary, of Treasurer, my bad, of the Cedar Rapids Community School District, State of Iowa, as now or required by law? If so, please respond by saying, "I do." Thank you. Sorry for Okay, thank you. We'll let Dave get seated. Next, we're going to move to learning and leadership. Next on our agenda is a presentation regarding the school resource officer data. I'll turn the meeting over to Superintendent Bush and Deputy Superintendent Nicole Quaker, who will introduce our guest from the Cedar Rapids Police Department.
Thank you very much, President Humbles, and thank you to our guests this evening for tonight's presentation. This is part two, I think we could call it part two of the series of data analysis. We had initiated this discussion at the last board meeting in the board conversation at the board table. However, prior to that, I've had lots of conversations to review the SRO program. Recognizing this is also a national context conversation, it is a state level conversation, and we want to make sure that we're looking at the city of Cedar Rapids and our community and our school district. So it's very much a local conversation as well. I am so proud to be a Cedar Rapidian, and I am so proud to be a graduate of this district. I'm proud of the relationships we have, the partnerships we have, everyone who comes to speak from their heart during our community delegations and petitions. And as we look at this program review, we know that we need to do everything that we possibly can to deliver on the promise of the vision of our district, which is every learner future ready. So thank you for your passionate responses. Thank you for all the community members who've attended our listening sessions. Thank you to the board for allocating this amount of intentional time for this conversation. It is super important. And so I just can't thank our community enough for bringing your voices and passion. And I'm hearing from lots of folks via email, research articles and data and opinions. And just so you know that we are reevaluating all of that. So the data that's presented tonight is one slice of the pie. We have other data that's certainly been presented, that's another slice of the pie. And not just numbers, but qualitative information and stories from the hearts of everyone in our community. But most certainly, our number one goal is to serve our children. So we will do our very best to continue to do so. So I just thank you, everyone, for your participation in this conversation. And so this is part 2 of a board conversation at the board table. But we will continue to program, evaluate, and bring, of course, a synthesis of that information, again, to the board in the future. So without any further ado, then, I'd like to hand it over to Deputy Superintendent Quaker, who will tee up the presentation for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Bush. And thank you, President Humbles and Board of Directors, for giving us additional time to present this information. And thank you to the CRPD, who will be coming up here and taking my spot here shortly. So, if you recall last month, get this to work, we reviewed 2 pieces of data, and that was our Black Student Unions, our student survey data of those 500 and some students that was brought up. So that was our number 1 data review. We also reviewed data from the Department of Human Rights, from the Criminal and Justice Division on student arrests. The Cedar Rapids Police Department is going to do a deeper dive into that data tonight and look at it from 7 to 4 during the explicit school days that align to some of those years. Tonight we are going to look at our Panorama student survey data, high level as well, also our community survey data, and then data from listening and feedback sessions. Again, you will see themes, and the alignment of percentages from various surveys comes very closely throughout our system of all the feedback that we've been gathering. So if you look up here on the Panorama survey results, we had 1,813 responses on this, and it was how safe or unsafe do you feel having an SRO in your school? So if you look at all of our students, it was at 13%, special education students 16%, ELL students 20%, and our Black students 24%. So you can kind of see, obviously, that increase depending on the student population of how safe or unsafe do you feel having an SRO. And this was all about feeling somewhat unsafe or very unsafe within the schools. What is your level of comfort being around an SRO? A little different question, but one that students could also answer. So 17% of students felt somewhat uncomfortable or very uncomfortable. It increased a little bit, 18% ELL students, and then 25% of Black students felt somewhat uncomfortable or very uncomfortable with the presence of SROs in our school system. I'm going to move on to the community survey results. We had 1,935 community members respond. So the breakdown of this I thought was somewhat important. So 60% were parents, 29% staff, 9% community, and then 2% were students or marked as other. So that was the breakdown of who took this community survey. And as for the students, so many of them, of course, took some of these other surveys that we had in place. So based on those results, how physically safe do SROs make students feel? 11% of respondents believe students feel somewhat safe or very unsafe. 18% of Black respondents, so again, a higher percentage. But if you look at the bottom, and this is consistent as well at 60% or higher based on the various surveys, how would you rate your personal experience with SROs in schools? 60% of respondents feel positive or very positive about their experiences with SROs. And I will have to say we have some amazing SROs in our system that are doing really great work, and we do appreciate that. So here again, if you look at this data, comparing data from the students, it was very comparable to 13% felt somewhat or very unsafe versus the 11%, so the data is pretty close, 2% difference there. So how do SROs make students feel at school? 10% of respondents believe students feel uncomfortable or made them feel uncomfortable or very uncomfortable. So again, a little bit lower, but around the same percentage. But if we go to Black respondents, 21% felt very uncomfortable or somewhat uncomfortable. But then you look, how do you feel, how do SROs make us feel in schools? 75% feel that they're needed, that they do provide that safety element, and they are an important part of the school district. Listening and feedback sessions. So this was actually a lot of fun to do and really interesting to hear people's perspectives. We had just over 20 people in attendance at Roosevelt on June 21st. On June 22nd, we had over 40 people in attendance, and very great sessions. Really appreciate, again, everybody coming out, sharing their opinion and their voice. It does matter. Some of the themes, so I'll have 2 sheets of different themes. SROs definitely foster relationships. That was very clear. They provide a sense of safety and security for many people. They're better trained to respond to student issues because of those relationships than what cops are on the street that don't have those relationships. The SROs in our district are definitely loved and appreciated. People definitely have relationships with them and care about them. That came across very clear. And SROs can connect to students and families, and they can connect to additional resources within the community, and they partner with the school district on that as well. Some other themes, but the presence of SROs insinuates schools are unsafe and marginalized populations are perceived as the problem. That was another theme. Another theme was heavy on the school to prison pipeline. So it wasn't just about arrests of our students of color or black students, it was just about arrests in general and how we want to stay away from arrests and move to diversion programs. And then we also talked about the disproportionate data, which is the case. And we need more mental health supports, which I know with ESSER dollars, we're providing more of those in the future for next year. The last thing before I turn it over to the CRPD, here is our slice of data pie. So we've collected with the CRPD presenting theirs here shortly. So far, 6 pieces of data, and we know each one of those is really important as a component, but one of them alone doesn't tell us the full story. And as Superintendent Bush was talking about, we're doing additional research, of course, and having many conversations, and we'll continue to do so. So with that said, Lieutenant Corey McGarvey and Chief German is going to come up before him and talk. Thank you. I'm going to give.
No, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks, Nicole. Good evening. Board of Education President Humbles, Board of Directors, Superintendent Bush, educators, students, and community members. It's my privilege tonight to speak to you about the School Resource Officer Program. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate the cooperation of the school district with the Cedar Rapids Police Department and our police officers. Without hesitation, I can tell you that our schools are safer and better places for our youth to get a quality education with school resource officers. I look forward to having one of our district lieutenants, Lieutenant Corey McGarvey, present you with the facts about the positive relationships and the outstanding work that our school resource officers perform by being partners with the school district. We will present specific data from officer interactions with the students and how we work in tandem with school administrators to ensure a safe learning environment for all students. When we analyzed the data, we found that less than 3% of all students were arrested over a 4-year period. Most students never have a negative experience with a school resource officer. And from the relatively few that require formal involvement by officers, the vast majority do not commit another offense that results in a formal complaint submitted to the Juvenile Court Services. We do acknowledge there is a disparity with arrests. However, the arrests are dictated by the behavior and are conducted in consultation with school administrators. Many arrests are also the result of victims wanting charges filed, which are considered non-discretionary arrests. With that said, we are committed to working with the school district to keep our schools safe for all students and improving our school resource officer program. Before I introduce Lieutenant McGarvey, I want to talk about 3 school resource officers' experiences that I believe underscored the value of this program. At the McKinley Middle School, 150 8th grade students completed a career interest assessment survey. 98 of the 150 students surveyed selected law enforcement as their first career choice. I firmly believe the work of Officer Ann Detmeyer, who is here tonight, building the relationships and having students want to emulate her is the primary reason for law enforcement being their #1 selection. Officer Detmeyer is actively involved in the school and has even started an after-school forensic club for the students who are interested. Officer Jess Barnhart, who is also here tonight, works tirelessly to create a better alternative for students at the Polk Alternative Education Center. She greets the students each morning, and she invests in these relationships. I will never forget the student who at the beginning of the year would not even speak to her. The child did not want to associate with a police officer. However, because of the opportunity that existed for Jess to build trust and relationships, the student requested that Officer Barnhart present his high school diploma at his spring graduation. And finally, in mid-April of this year, the school resource officer at Kennedy High School, Officer Drew Tran, who is here, was alerted to an older male in a vehicle approaching female students in the school parking lot and offering money for the students to get into his vehicle. Officer Tran went to investigate, and the man drove off at a high rate of speed. Officer Tran pursued the suspect, located him, and arrested him. This case demonstrates how students trusted Officer Tran and the school administrators, and she reported the suspicious activity, and the officer was right on scene, right on the site, and was able to stop a potentially dangerous situation. I shudder to think what would have happened had Officer Tran not been there. It goes without saying that I'm extremely proud of our school resource officers, and I support this program 100%. Our school system will be safer with SROs, thereby making sure our community will be safer. I thank you for allowing me a few minutes to share just a fraction of the overall positive experiences this program affords. And now I'll turn it over to Lieutenant McGarvey.
Thank you, Chief. My name is Lieutenant Corey McGarvey. I'm an East Side District Lieutenant, and I'm also in charge of the school resource officers on the east side of Cedar Rapids. With me tonight is Lieutenant Matt Welsh. He's the West Side District Lieutenant, and he's in charge of the school resource officers on the west side. Also is Kent Christian. He's our crime analyst. He has spent days upon days painstakingly going through this data. This data you're going to see tonight is extremely accurate. Over the last 6 weeks, we've heard a lot about the program, some of it accurate, some of it not. So hopefully I can answer some of those questions for you tonight. I know you've heard about the history and the current status of the program. I won't go through that again. I just want to remind you, it's a 50-50 cost share with the police department. You get the SRO for the 9 months out of the year. You don't pay any of the overtime, and you don't pay for any of the schooling. The city does that. What's the mission? I heard this at the community outreach sessions. What's the mission of the SRO program? The mission's that, you guys, it's to develop positive relationships with kids. That mission's never changed since its inception in 2010. If we don't build relationships with the kids, how do we get to the root of their problems? If we don't build relationships with kids, how do they trust us? How do they tell us stuff? How do we help them? We want to be that positive role model, that trusted adult. We want to provide safety to the schools, students, and staff as well. How do we select SROs? Each SRO needs a commander recommendation. And the last few SROs that have come to us have had multiple command recommendations. We get those recommendations, we review those, we ask the applicant to submit to us a memorandum outlining why they're interested in the program and what is their youth experience, whether it's volunteer youth experience, paid youth experience, but we want to know what's their experience with the youth. The applicants come back. We have a scored interview that includes members of the school district. And what I mean by that is members of the police department are on the interview panel and members of the school district. And we want members from the school where the vacancy is for the SRO. So the last one was Jefferson. So we had the Jefferson principal, the Jefferson associate principal, and one of the staff. That's scored. We go through the scores together as a group, and we make that joint decision to put the right SRO in the school. Training. I know you've seen some of the training. I'll be brief on this. SROs get the same training that normal police officers get. Driving, first aid, defensive tactics, implicit bias, diversity training, mental health, de-escalation. They get all that stuff. But when you're selected to be an SRO, you get more training. They're all sent to NASRO, National Association of School Resource Officers. They go to the 40-hour basic school at a minimum. I included the link there. I would encourage each of you to go visit it. It's a very professional organization. The website is full of good information. NASRO, they are the school policing experts, by far. We send all our SROs there. NASRO teaches that the triad concept of school policing. There it is. I know you saw it last month. CRPD's been a member of NASRO for years. When we can afford it in the training budget, we try and get the SROs to additional training. 2 of them in August are going to a program outside of Des Moines, adolescent mental health training for SROs. We're getting 2 of those SROs to that in August. So before I flip slides and we go to the data, I want to explain, because I feel like there's a misconception, what does a typical juvenile arrest look like? A typical juvenile arrest is they're given a court date and usually they're turned back over to mom and dad. Either we take them home or the parents come and get them. Listening to the community feedback sessions, there's a misconception that they are handcuffed behind their back, put in the back of a police car, and driven out to juvenile detention. That happens very rarely in a juvenile arrest. So you're going to see the word arrest coming up a lot. I just want you to have an understanding of what that means. Victim and discretionary officer arrests, those can play a factor in our data. The victim has a say in whether or not we press charges. Each SRO and admin team, they make those decisions together. An incident happens, they huddle up and say, this is what's happened. How are we going to handle it? Are we going to handle it with school suspension consequences? Are we going to handle it with law enforcement consequences? Or both? So SROs huddle up with their principal or associate every time there's a student that's going to be charged. SROs make arrests based on probable cause. They don't arrest based on race, sex, or religion. They arrest based on facts. SROs don't go to school to arrest kids. That's the last thing that they want to do. We went through this data painstakingly. For 4 academic years, we excluded as much as we could to make it as accurate as possible. We excluded weekends. We excluded summer hours. We took out derecho days, COVID days, things like that. So we added in 18 and 19-year-olds because we know sometimes there can be 18 and 19-year-old students in school. My point is we try to get this as absolutely accurate as possible. Okay. I apologize, it's a little blurry. When it converts from PowerPoint to Google, it's a tiny bit blurry, but the y-axis on the left corresponds to the data bars in the slide, from 0 to 90. The y-axis on the right corresponds with the overall line of arrests. The blue line at the top. The legend at the bottom is for the schools. Kennedy, Washington, Jefferson. So as you move left to right in each academic year, it's the same in every group of bars. So for example, in the 18-19 academic year, the total number of arrests were 257. In 1920, we removed 55 COVID days to make it more accurate. That's 30% of the school year almost. There's also things that can affect the data. If we look at Washington High School, it's the blue bar, the academic year 1920. They had 50 arrests for the year. 18 of those arrests occurred in one huge fight inside the school. So if you take out that one incident in February of 2020, Washington's down to 32 arrests for the year. So things like that are factors in this data. Percentages of SRO arrests at SRO schools over 4 years. You'll notice that the high schools make up about 66% of the arrests, not quite, but close. They're pretty proportionate to the size of the school, meaning Kennedy, Washington, Jefferson. The Polk program is in purple. It represents 21%. It's a challenging program. The SRO there is extremely patient, but there are times when we just have to stop whatever is occurring and make an arrest or charge. And that's unfortunate, but it has to happen at times. SRO arrests at SRO schools by year and by race. Black students are represented in blue. White students are represented in green. And those are the academic years 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, and 2021. Obviously, the 2021 year is very low, and we all know why. There's very few students in school. Black students are overrepresented. We understand that. This is a very good summary slide of 4 years of data. The percentage of SRO arrests at SRO schools by race over 4 years. So you'll see that 54%, 54.6% are black students. 42% the green are the white students. If we look at the data you were shown last month about your demographics, you have approximately 19% black students and 63% white students on average. So we understand that the black students are overrepresented. So we looked at the data. Our SROs make up 20% of all juvenile arrests in town. The other 80% comes from our patrol division and the CID unit, Criminal Investigation Unit. We looked at those percentages of the racial makeups. Our SROs are arresting at the same rate as the rest of the police department, almost identical. There's no strong correlation between students getting arrested in school and whether or not they're arrested outside of school. The vast majority of juveniles arrested outside of school were never arrested by an SRO. This helps debunk the school to pipeline prison. Or, sorry, the school to prison pipeline theory, at least in Cedar Rapids. If it were true, we would need a much higher portion of students arrested in school. 84% of our students arrested by an SRO were not arrested again in this time period. 84%. So that tells us that the SRO arrest or charge did change behavior.
say did or didn't change?
Did change behavior. Arrest frequency. So we have 678 arrests by 579 unique individuals. So some people were arrested more than once. Of those 579, 64% were male, 47% black, and 50% white. So we're overrepresented in blacks, and we're overrepresented in males. "47 students were arrested 3 or more times," and I know that the totals at the top only indicate 46. When we had values less than 5 of another racial makeup, we excluded those for privacy. 93 students were arrested twice. The rest were arrested once, 439. I want to point out 2 very important things. At the bottom, 93.7% of our black students, 93.7%, were never arrested or charged by an SRO. 98.2% of our white students were never charged or arrested. 0.2% were arrested 3 or more times. 0.2%. So that helps us with the school to prison pipeline theory. 97.2% of students that go through SRO schools were not arrested. Diversion. This is some information about our diversion plan. We started it back in '06. It just included disorderly conduct. This was really hard for us to extract that data. We had to look at every case and read the reports for all of them. So we know of at least 40 diversionary opportunities of those 279, which is about 14% of all the arrests. Of the 40, 20 were white students, 19 were black students, and 1 unknown race. In 2020, we greatly expanded this program. The school district was a stakeholder. The juvenile court system was a stakeholder. The county attorney's office was there. What I'll say about the new program, we've greatly expanded the charges that we will put into diversion. We realize to shrink this gap, we've got to divert way more kids, and our SROs are leading the charge in doing that. Crimes like assault, simple, criminal mischief, theft, alcohol, tobacco, vaping, all those things we can now divert. The first 3, the victim has to agree that the suspect can go into diversion. So of the assault, criminal mischief, or the theft, the victim has to agree to that. And we can divert all students one time. Another goal of the new diversion program is to get to the root of the problem. Get these kids into different counseling, ASAC, mental health, things like that. That's part of the diversion packet. Some of the good things the SROs do. They're that conduit to services. It's one of the original mission statements that we have. The SROs make these referrals. We call them referrals. We refer to school services. F2 means Foundation 2. 4 Oaks, mental health unit or mental health counseling. CIT is the crisis intervention team at the police department. And then Waypoint. You'll see there the numbers of referrals SROs have done over the years. All SROs, almost all of them are CIT trained. It's a 40-hour school. Currently, our Jefferson SRO is working with the CIT unit for the entire summer, gaining experience doing that. The school safety aspect. The SROs obviously help with tornado drills, fire drills, run, hide, and fight. There's the numbers of drills that they've done. Did you know that the SROs also assist in updating all the school emergency plans for the district? They also do the private schools as well. Another one of the core principles, they're that guest instructor. They pop into a class, they teach for 15 minutes on one of these relevant topics. The McKinley SRO took them on a courthouse tour of the courthouse. We have a seat belt and car seat installation instructor at Metro. Things like that. We try and get out into the youth and community as much as possible. We do job fairs, cops and kids, Santa cops, things like that. There's the numbers there that we've done over the years. In the summer of 19, I've been in this role since August of 2018. The summer of 19 was the real first summer I was involved in the SRO program. It was a normal summer. In that summer, we did 96 different events. Things like Mount Mercy Jumpstart Program Pop-Up Club, Kids on Course, Cops and Kids, and Catch with the Cop. So in the summers, they're active as well with youth. I'll just say this in conclusion, it's a very good program. We've worked a lot with the Deputy Superintendent and her staff over the last 6 weeks, reviewing the program top to bottom. We don't feel like there's need for major changes, but we realize and recognize we can do better. Way more diversion opportunities. And then we need to have our SROs collecting better data on types of incidents they're being called to and the racial makeup of those types of calls. This program builds relationships with kids and it promotes safety. It really does. The vast majority of the interactions with SROs are positive. I sat through the community sessions and I heard the feedback from staff and from parents. The last four slides you saw sum up all the good things you can do. It's hard to put those good things on a stat sheet or make a statistic out of those things. How do you make a statistic out when a kid comes to an SRO office and they're having a problem with a girlfriend or a boyfriend? Or they're having problems with mom and dad? It's hard to capture that good thing they do, that good advice they give. I'll say this, every SRO here, every one of them has a story to tell about how they've turned a kid's life around or they've saved a kid's life from suicide. Every one of them. These stories are priceless. This program's worth every dollar you've put into it. It's worth every dollar we put in it. Thank you.
So finishing up, thank you, Chief German and Lieutenant McGarvey, and all of the rest of you that have been working with us diligently on this data. But what is our role as a district and what are our next steps? So I think this is a time to just quickly reflect on where we're at. Every learner future ready. I'm going to say that again because I think it's so critically important. As an educational institution, this is what we do. This is what we're called to do. We're called to serve. And I know there's so many ways we can best serve kids, but what does it really mean, every learner future ready? If you look at our strategic plan on culture, provide a safe, supportive, collaborative culture in which diversity of every learner is valued and embraced. Every learner, not 75%, not 80%. So as we think about this, it's every single learner. Board Policy 605, also critically important. The district will make every reasonable effort to protect and improve the physical, emotional, and social well-being of students. So there are definitely steps we can take to make improvements. We want every learner to feel a sense of belonging and to feel safe and supported in the environments that we're providing as a system. Our equity belief statement is so powerful. We believe equity of voices, resources, opportunities, and expectations is critical for the current and future success of every student. When you look at our data of our student achievement gaps, they align with our gaps that we have in Panorama surveys of our students not feeling that sense of belonging. If we're going to close student achievement gaps, we have to make sure everybody feels welcome and valued. We talk about employee retention and wanting to keep employees in our system. It's that sense of belonging and feeling valued. It is that equity belief that plays a role. Our next steps is we're going to continue to analyze data. We're going to do a quantitative and qualitative data set, continue to review. Tomorrow we have conversations with the principals of the buildings that have SROs, and we're really looking on our side of what are some of the things as a system with procedures and practices we need to revisit to set up all of our students for success and be better partners. And the second thing will be that we'll come back in August with a recommendation for the next school year of what those next steps look like. CRPD has been working with us on some potential changes. So we're looking at some of those things of what could we do to make the system and the program better and serve kids even better. We, again, recognize and appreciate everything CRPD is doing. We recognize and appreciate all of our SROs and the hard work they're doing. Also our principals, right? This is about all of us working together, every learner future ready. So thank you again for your time. Thank you to Cedar Rapids Police Department and all their time and efforts they've done in meeting with us and continuing to collaborate as we join this journey and process of the audit of the system.
Thank you so much, the Cedar Rapids Police and Deputy Superintendent Nicole Quaker. But I'm sure that there are questions that the board may have. And if I may, I would like to ask the first question. Is this the time?
This is the time for questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I was looking at the data that you had presented about asking students if they felt safe, when I look at the percentages, and we had our special ed, ELL, and black students not feeling a comfort with SROs in the school. My question is, why? Why are they not feeling safe? Because we want all of our students, and we know all students think we have behavior problems. We want them to thrive in our district. And like you said, every learner future ready. But when I see numbers that the students that are being that are impacted and the rest are black and brown, and I think for me that is concerning. I know we talked about the prison to school to prison. That's troubling too, because if these children are being arrested in school, this follows them, and you cannot tell me that it does not. And then you walk around and you're labeled that you're a problem. And I'm just wondering, when I see this data where kids in brown and black, the bottom line, they don't feel, there's not a comfort with our SROs. I know there is training. I don't know what additional training that needs to happen, but that is a concern to me as a board member. And my second is, I'm looking at the schools where the SROs are, and they're at the schools where we have a larger number of brown and black students. So what message are we sending out? Are we saying brown and black kids are problematic in our district, so let's get SROs in there? Because there's bad behaviors all over. So those are I know that was a lot. And the thing is, because we want all of our kids to thrive. And if there's not that comfort with the SROs, how are they going to thrive?
And I haven't, of course, dug in and been able to have a conversation with everybody who filled that out in the survey.
Okay.
But I've done a ton of research, and I have talked to some students. So we just heard that the community disproportionality exists and follows in our schools. Well, if I'm a student at home, and the night before my dad gets arrested by a police officer, and I'm going to school, and I'm seeing that police officer, what sense of safety am I going to be feeling? Now, again, we don't know what the circumstances was, but any type of negative interaction with law enforcement that they've had previously, and there is more of our black and brown population who have had that negative interaction, the numbers do align within our system. I think also it's So I can speak just for somebody that was a kid in a system that had one. I, as a white student, felt like, are they looking for me to do something wrong? Now, that's just, again, my personal feeling, but I think some kids are feeling like, why are they here? Which we can do a better job on, right? Communicating what is the purpose of the SROs. We've also talked about like a soft uniform, because they've taught me a lot. Like the 30-pound vest with all the stuff and the camera, I mean, they have all their tools that they need to functionally do their job, but that's intimidating. I think that's intimidating to adults, and I think that's very intimidating to many students. Also, if they had a negative interaction with an SRO in a hallway or in a parking lot, and again, we have wonderful, amazing SROs, I'm not saying that, but just having somebody there is an easier opportunity to say, hey, I need you as an SRO, this student I think is doing something wrong, can you check into it? It's just easier access. Now again, there's things that we can do to address some of those things, but we can't ignore the fact that all of our students and some of our populations at a more disproportionate rate feel unsafe in our buildings at this time.
Other questions from the board, our board, that you may have? Director Newman?
Question, and I want to start off with thank you to everybody who came and spoke tonight, who educated us on both sides of the equation. I wouldn't even say it's both sides. There's just a huge, big equation, right? And this just isn't a clear-cut majority rules kind of thing. And I just want to say that when our black and brown and biracial students feel fear, that we've got to do something, because that impacts their ability to get an education, which exacerbates the problem, right? I do want to say that I was really impressed with our administration and specifically Deputy Superintendent's quote about being open to addressing this, that we even said as a district, we haven't had complete ownership over this program. I think that that gives me personally as a director a lot of hope that we can get through this together and make the changes necessary. I don't have a question, I just want to say that. So, it's really important I think it's really important that we take honest assessment of what's going on as CRPD, as a district, and we get there with our community together.
Director Borcherding?
Yeah, I also have a comment, and then I have a question. And the comment that I have is that just based on going and attending the listening sessions, this is not, for me, for my personal viewpoint as a board member, this is not an individual issue. It's not about an individual SRO. It's a system issue. So as a board member, where my job is to provide oversight through our strategic plan, which is our guiding document, the issue that I have is that we have two focus areas that are in conflict. We have our focus area of culture, and we have our focus area of systems and resources that are in conflict. And I am curious as a board member and need to see data on how that's influencing our system indicators. How is that influencing graduation? How is it influencing equity, and how is it influencing student achievement? As a board, that is what we should be wrapping our arms around. That's our guiding principle. That's what guides our work as a board. So as a system issue, I see there being a real disequilibrium there. So I think that is something that needs to be addressed from the board perspective. My question is about juvenile court services. I'm wondering when the diversion program is happening and we're going to those juvenile court services for a diversionary program, if there is a district student advocate that accompanies the student when that is happening. Is there somebody from district who is there, or is it purely a police and court matter?
Most generally, when we meet with juvenile court services, it is members of the SRO group, members of the criminal investigation division, and mostly then juvenile court service officers. And then every once in a while, somebody from the school district is there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I've not seen any students. I haven't been to that many. Remember, I was put in August of 18, and then the ratio happened. And we used to meet with them about every other month, if memory serves me right. Yeah, no students.
Right. So I think it's great that we have this diversion program, but it doesn't look like and I understand that there are qualifiers that get a student to the opportunity to have a diversion program. I understand that. But my concern there, again, from a system perspective, is that if this is an incident that's occurring inside one of our facilities on our property, I'm wondering if a district advocate needs to be there to provide some support and opportunities for integration for that student when they're returning to school, to kind of know the situation, to help assist and support them as they're continuing as one of our student body members.
We do have a person, we have a couple different district personnel who do help with that liaison of services. It might be a program that is part of the diversion program, but it wasn't necessarily that was their pathway to get to those services. But we do have those liaisons. Honestly, I think works a lot with Polk and also Metro, but we do have those support services at the district level. So we have the system in place, we have the people in place, and we definitely could extend that.
Yeah, and I think that, extending that would also be something that would be part of kind of developing process. As far as the district is concerned, developing process around this issue. I'm not really clear on what process is. That's all I have.
I'll just say one thing, working with the deputy superintendent, that the amount of resources you guys have dedicated to students is amazing. I didn't know half of the things that you guys have in place in your buildings. So
That's our job.
it's been a real learning experience for
That's
us
our
as
job.
well.
Yeah.
Other questions, Director Garlock?
Yeah, I want to thank you for the information that you presented tonight, and thanks to the administration for addressing the SRO situation here in Cedar Rapids. As Director Newman said, I think we've had it in place and haven't really addressed the effectiveness of the program, so I'm glad that we're taking this look at it. I do want to sort of go back to a comment that was made earlier in the presentation tonight at the meeting. We got information about the Panorama Student Survey, and I think there were about 1,800 students that responded to that. I think it's an important point to look at whether that data is statistically relevant, and I'm not a statistician, so I don't know the answer to that, but that seems like a fairly small number of respondents. And then my follow-up to that is, did we do any sort of demographic breakdown to know if all of our student populations were equally represented?
So we sent the Panorama Survey to the buildings that have SROs in it with those questions attached, because we felt like all the other buildings that didn't have an SRO wouldn't be able to answer that accurately. So it is statistically valid. We did that cross-reference and could get you the breakdown of the students that participated and took that survey. I don't know if we can break it down to those 5 questions, but I bet we can, because we have some pretty amazing statisticians here. So.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have any demographic information about?
I can get that, but the percentages of everything we've looked at have been similar in alignment of the
Okay.
disproportionality and in how students are responding, or community members or parents or staff.
Excuse me, could you use a microphone so that, thank you, we'd like to.
She's asking if it's a statistically valid amount of data. Yeah.
Okay. That was my first question, right? My second question is, does the demographic percentages of the students who responded align with the population of those buildings?
So what you're running into actually 2 different problems. The overall number of responses to the survey is a representative sample for the total population of the school at a generic level, with about a 2% margin of error. Until you get a breakdown of the number of responses by demographic cohort, you won't know whether it's a representative sample. I will say that the Tableau data, the community survey, it is a representative sample for the city. However, it is not a representative sample when you look at the breakdown by demographic cohort.
Okay.
There's some wide variations in the margin of error for that based on each of the individual demographic groups and what the population is assessed to be for the city. That's based on the 2019 population estimate because the 2020 census data hasn't been released yet.
And where are those gaps that you're referring to? And I'm sorry, I'm new.
I'm sorry.
Who are you?
My name's I'm Kent Christen. I'm the analyst for the police department.
Great, thank you.
So when you look at if I take a look at the community survey breakdown based on the numbers I was able to extrapolate from the slides we received, the margin of error for Native Americans was 27.03% with a 95% confidence level. The margin of error for Asians was 22.4. The margin of error for black residents was 10.35. And then the margin for whites was 2.40. So you can see there's a wide variation in the margin of error based on the number of respondents that were in there. What I don't have is a breakdown for the smaller demographic groups like Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders and folks like that. Those levels of responses, though, were very small.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Can I ask another question, or should someone else have a turn? We're making a significant investment of resources in the SRO program, and I don't know if there's some information that can be gathered for us, but I do think it's important that kids have an adult in the building that they can always connect to. I'm just wondering if there are other programs that also place an adult in the building that students could have a positive relationship with. One of the things that comes to my mind is the restorative justice program that we have in some buildings. Have we looked at that program to see how the results are? Are we getting positive results from that program? Is that an alternative to a fully decked out police officer? I know this is a complicated issue, but I feel like there are programs that place adults in positive role models.
So there's a lot of different programs, and some of our schools are utilizing those, and we could expand some of those, and some of them are at a much lower cost rate. So we have had some of those discussions, but we've really been analyzing this data at this point to come back with recommendations, so those will be some of the next steps. We have a lot of community partners that do some amazing work with very clear outcomes and metrics that we look at, and they have to support what their work is on closing those student achievement gaps, especially now with ESSER dollars and having more community partners join in. In fact, we have a community RFP review, I think, coming up Wednesday. So we have 15 or 16 different community partners that have ideas of ways that they could support our students, and some of those are through things such as restorative circles.
Okay.
In the restorative practices, yes, certainly many of our community partners, but that's also an implementation of a practice for the ownership of our own staff. So when you're looking at restorative work, that really is at the leadership level of every building participating in that. So I see them more as and situations. And so that's on our practices of improvement. And what's highlighted tonight is every single disciplinary act with any child in any of our schools, the ownership's on us, no matter who is there to support it in any event. So I think that was highlighted by Chief, where we collaborate around every single one of those incidents, and it's our ownership. And so even community partners who support restorative work, we still have to be the ones to own that work. Great point, Dr. Garlock.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a great presentation. The data was helpful.
Director Tominski, Vice President Tominski, I'm sorry. Do you have a question?
First, thank you for our service to the community. It's a really tough job, and I know I'm happy that other people are doing it and doing their best to keep us safe. We talk about the selection process, and I appreciated that part of the presentation. I am curious to be clear on when are staff and people from the school district involved when you spoke, it sounded like they were involved with the initial interview, but is it the second interview, like the actual panel discussion?
They're involved in the last interview,
Okay.
which is the one and only interview, where those interviews are scored, and then we work together and make a
Okay.
group decision. Yep. They have to be screened by us at the PD first to make sure they meet the initial requirements, and then they're granted an interview after that.
And then, like, a follow-up to that is understanding the selection process. What would be the process for removal? Like, if we're not having the intended outcomes, if there's negative experiences, what would be that process?
Yeah. That's outlined in our contract between the city and the school board as well, or the school district as well. But yes, not meeting satisfactory standards, disciplinary problems, things like that. This is a, the word I'm looking for is, you're selected to be in this role. It's not your right to be in this role.
Mhm.
So we can remove you for performance.
And then, can anybody speak? We have a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, that's been in place. So I'm kind of curious if the recommendation is to move forward with this program, who would be invited to redraft that memorandum of understanding? Would that just be school district and the police department? Would we invite folks from the community?
I would say we work on that collaboratively in partnership based on the agreements and based on whatever recommendations we'd be sharing with the board at the next board meeting.
Yeah.
There would definitely have to be changes. There's a lot in there we talked about. We could have.
I would agree. Everything we've done has been together. Almost everything.
And I think as we saw through the work that has been done, there's a lot of community feedback on this subject. I think there's lots of best practices that we could learn from. So I would just encourage us to just reach out to the community to collaborate beyond just the two organizations. That would be my personal thought. That's it for now.
Director Reesinger.
I just wanted to make sure that I understood something. You had said that the people who responded to the survey were all the people who received that were people who had attended one of those schools or their children attended one of those schools?
The Panorama Student Survey that was given just to the students just went to the students and buildings with SROs. The community survey that we
Went to
collected
everyone.
feedback on community sessions were for anybody and everybody.
Is there any way to break down the data to show for those people who have a connection to one of those schools, what their responses were? Were they the same? Were they different?
We can break it down by school, yes. But some don't have students maybe in buildings that have SROs currently, but they have. So it was very, perspectives and depending who the SROs were, or the general underlying philosophy of what their beliefs are as educational system versus law enforcement. But yes, we could get more breakdowns if you guys want to see those. Tableau does wonderful things, and so does Panorama.
Okay, I know I personally would love to, and
Okay.
I have lots of data questions, but I won't bore the audience with that. I do have one other question, though. In the community listening sessions or in any other mechanism, have there been requests from students or parents or the community to expand the SRO program into schools that currently do not have them?
It was not brought up, no, by parents, but we didn't intentionally, we didn't ask that question, right? Now, I know the CRPD in our last very long meeting brought up, how we started in 2 middle schools and the goal was to eventually expand. But nobody's brought that up, but we also haven't really opened it up directly for that conversation or asked that question.
Right. It concerns me if we have people who are giving an opinion about what should happen, but they are not also asking for that same service.
Mm-hmm.
Understand. Thank you. Yep.
And I was going to, with the question Director Reesinger had, that why aren't SROs in all schools? Has that ever been discussed? Or, and I guess that is a question too. If we're having SROs in schools, why aren't they in all schools and not just schools where they have a high percentage of brown and black students? So, and I believe people in the community, they're looking at that too, that you saying, hey, these schools, there's a problem. And I am not saying SROs are horrible. There is work that needs to be done so all of our children feel safe and they have a comfort in our district, because we do want them to thrive. So that has been something on my mind too. If you have them in certain ones, why not all?
Right, and the message we're sending currently, which we've talked a lot about, we have them in 2 of the 6 middle schools. So that's why it came up, maybe we should have them in more. And I said, well, maybe we should have them in less. Do we really need them in middle schools? Our data shows that our schools, our middle schools are safe. We aren't having police called a lot. With that said, it depends on, again, if you look at the relationship leg of the triad and connections to communities, everybody's going to have their opinions on that. But for next year, we've been having really challenging conversations of, do they serve all 6? Do they serve none? What does that look like? Because we do have to change that message for sure.
So when you come back in August, you'll have recommendations, because, I was thinking too, do we need them in middle schools? Look at where we may be having some concerns, and maybe it's the high schools, but I think that's something that we have to sort out. And Vice President Tominski, when he was saying, looking at the training, I think it's so important. You can go through training for 40 hours and you're done. Are you putting it to good use? And it should be ongoing. I know we use the words implicit bias, diversity, and those are words that people are using now. Do people really understand what it is? And that's what's important to me, is that our children are doing well in the school, all students. So they do succeed and they go on and do great things, because I truly believe in the Cedar Rapids Community School District. That's why I'm sitting here on this board. And it is, and I can appreciate you guys coming to present to the board. But we know there's work that needs to be done. So I thank the young women from Kennedy High School, Rafa and Rama, that did bring this to the board, and that they know, and I know Superintendent Bush has been involved in you as well, that we're going to get this right, because it's just so important for the success of our students.
May I make one other comment?
No.
Briefly?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate the outlining of the mission of the SRO program. I would ask that, as you are coming up with potential alternatives, that one of those items is an annual evaluation of each of those missions, in the same way that the district evaluates learning on a regular basis. I think that if that could be made publicly available, how well are we doing to achieve these missions? That would be at least something to consider, be very helpful, especially since you've got an analyst here.
Understand. Thank you. And I wanted to offer one thing to the board. Just if you have any other statistical questions that you come up with tonight, tomorrow, the next day, just email the district folks. We probably have that answer already. So don't be afraid to ask. We're here to help you guys make this decision.
You'll get an email, no problem.
You open the door. Director Borcherdine and then Director Garlock.
I do just have a question. I just want to understand the data collection a little bit more. So we're looking at data that's coming from different schools, and I know that in some of our schools, and we're making steps towards having common language and shared practice. I'm wondering if it is the same process of escalation that results in an action. When we're looking at data from Jefferson, do they have a different escalation process that would result in an action than Kennedy or Washington or Polk or Metro or any of our other schools? Because we're just looking at raw numbers at this point, but we may actually not be comparing the same thing.
So, well, and I think is it about de-escalation, or are you talking about what gets to the point that where there's an actual arrest being made.
Right, when
Yeah.
we're looking at where the arrest is being made and how it's being made, is that consistent across our system? Is the process to reach an arrest consistent across our system? If it's consistent across our system because we're following police guidelines, then we're not following a district process to get to that end result. I'm curious.
It is not, but it will be. So right now it is, in talking to the principals, which the ones that have SROs, we've been talking through this. So this isn't just SROs, right? Like we've talked about, this is in collaboration with our administrators. And tomorrow we're doing deep dives into our policies and procedures and our mindset of what is it that we want. We don't want to arrest any kids. So this isn't about arresting anyone, right? We want to divert, we want to educate kids, we want to prepare them, every learner future ready. So it's about somewhat consistency too. So there's different personalities and opinions and operational procedures. Now we do have, of course, discipline policies and procedures in place.
Sure.
But how people operationalize those, of course, is not consistently the same. And what I believe to be equitable as a principal might not be what Mr. Ballard, says is equitable. So we're having those conversations. I think they're closer than what we think they are. But again, having those conversations is really helping us to know you can have all the policies and procedures in place, but time to evaluate the data, really dig into it, and have those conversations with other buildings of what's happening and how are we best serving students.
Thank you.
Director Garland.
Yes, one last, I promise, quick question. We know that there are some districts, even in close proximity to us, who do not have SROs. In collecting information as we look at this, will we hear from those districts and have a discussion with them about how they ensure school safety without SROs?
So Cedar Rapids Police Department also services another Cedar Rapids district, and that is College Community. And there are SROs here tonight. And then the Linn-Mar and Marion district actually share an SRO amongst their schools. And we've actually collaborated a lot with them around the Run, Hide, Fight efforts across our systems. And then, so yes, we do have those conversations, but we haven't done a deep data analysis dive with the districts and how they're utilizing their SROs.
Does Iowa City have SROs?
They did at one point in time, but I think it was just in one school. I don't think they do any longer, right? No, no.
Okay.
No, but I would say probably what's most comparable is the UEN, the 8 original UEN, Urban Education Network districts. And this has obviously been a topic amongst the state. And so it's a lot of conversations in our school districts about that.
Okay. Yeah, do you get any feedback from Iowa City about school safety without an SRO? I mean, is there any conversation?
I would say we have not had an intentional conversation around this very topic with Iowa City, but we certainly can. Yeah. A lot about mental health services, though, with Iowa City, but yeah.
Director Merschbrock.
First, I just wanted to ask Deputy Superintendent Quaker, we've got a lot of quantitative data, and we had some qualitative data from students at the last meeting, but is there anything you can add kind of from the voice of the student? I don't know if we've heard directly, we haven't heard in person, or if any of that was, from a student who has been arrested at school. That's a perspective that seems to be lacking in this whole conversation. And also, when you see this gap between, 93% of black students haven't had an arrest, but 25% in our Panorama Survey say they feel unsafe at school. Is there anything more you could add kind of from the voice of the student? Because, I'm sure it would be intimidating for a student to come and share that in person, but I'm sure they have opinions on it as well. So
there definitely is opinions, and of course on both sides, like this has been the topic all across the board. I can definitely share some of those. I think that will fit really next time with the data sources, if that's all right. I do have some written out, and I'll make sure I talk to those students before I share their specific stories, but I think that does have a meaningful piece, and we've heard some of those, but not a whole lot of those. So
and I don't know if it would be appropriate, but if they weren't comfortable sharing, in person at a meeting, I would be comfortable, and like I said, I don't know if this is appropriate for a board member to do, superintendent, but I would, hear that person privately if that's a student, whether it be a current student or a former student, but
We
if that's
did
not
have
appropriate, that's fine.
open-ended feedback from the survey that it's anonymous, or identifiable by demographic, but not identifiable by person.
Yeah.
And so we could share some of those anecdotes
yep.
and comments
Yep,
as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then for CRPD, I heard a lot about the mission of the program, and I don't doubt at all that there's a lot of positives coming out of the program, and especially, with those summer activities going and, meeting with people in the community. But the original piece that we're looking at, and I think there's a bigger piece at it, and you mentioned even that we need to have more data on, those interactions that don't escalate to an actual arrest or a formal complaint. Is there a way to fulfill the positive portion of your mission without the arrests? Because just from the perspective of a school board member, we want that, and Director Borcherding was getting at this earlier, we want those outcomes for our students, graduate, fulfill the profile of a graduate. And so I don't know if having a formal complaint against them, whether it's warranted or not, is beneficial to that. And so is there a way, could your officers operate either in a school building or, being called with a memorandum of understanding with the school district to the building and, with less arrests? Or if it's negative, for a kid to have that interaction with the criminal justice system, the preference as a school board should be 0 arrests of students if it's going to impact their education. But is that something that CRPD and the SROs could do?
I don't think 0 is going to be a realistic number, but we are going to push that diversion program for those discretionary arrests in the future big time. And hopefully I can come back next year and show you the success of the program and how many diversions we've had. But remember earlier, the victim does have a say in some of this sometimes. I
actually wanted to ask you about that as well. In that situation where the victim, gets a say in whether or not charges are pressed, is that something that happens kind of at the time of the incident? Does the SRO come to the victim and say, hey, do you want to press charges? How does that process look?
Yeah, most times it's the victim that comes to the SRO.
Okay.
And they said, so-and-so smashed my laptop, I'd like something done about it. And then if the SRO has probable cause and can develop enough information to feel like this crime occurred and it's reasonable that it occurred, then yes, the victim does get a say in that.
Okay.
A strong say.
I'm sorry, I have to ask another one. I'm curious, if that same situation happened in a building, somebody smashed a laptop that did not involve, and there was not an SRO present, what would the district policy be? How would that be handled?
So again, the student and parents also have rights if it's their personal property, that even if it is a school situation and I've been a principal, in many different environments, and where I didn't have an SRO as a principal, and parents still press charges outside of the district. So it still could result in that. It doesn't mean because you have an SRO that actually happens. So we would follow our discipline policy. We outline what our discipline policy is and how we too have replacement behaviors and other ways in which we support. It's not always suspension, but in the end, parents still have a right to do that.
But the parents would be the one that would need, or the student would need to be the one that initiates that. It would not be.
Correct.
Okay, thank
Correct. Yeah.
I can provide an actual circumstance where a student had a personal item stolen. Probable cause was developed on another student who stole it. This occurred at one of the schools. Administrator advised that the suspect should be arrested, but the SRO intervened and wanted to inject a process, a restorative justice process, a circle group where the victim and the suspect, administrators and the SRO sat together and discussed it. And at the end, the decision was not to arrest. So without the involvement of this SRO, that would have resulted probably in a criminal arrest.
Thank you.
Building on what Director Rasinger just said, I would be interested to know what rates of similar offenses are occurring in buildings without SROs, and what is the what's the end result of those similar offenses? Thank you.
I want to thank the board for the questions and thank you all for the presentation. It's been very informational. We look forward for when you return to the board, that would be appreciated. And I do thank you for all the information that you guys have provided. It's been very helpful. Thank you. Now we will move to administration. We will end our evening with a resolution of reduction and removal of commitment of general fund balances. Does anyone have any questions for Dave? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Thank you all for that, and with no further business, we stand adjourned. And I thank each and every one of you for attending tonight.